Hi, Michael. It's James here, and I'm delighted to get to meet you a little bit. We've been going back and forth in the discussion boards, but it's kind of nice for at least me to put a face to the name. I'll get to see you sometime, I hope. Anyway, thank you for letting me take a look at your lesson plan. I applaud you on its organization and having a succinct direction you would like to go. And I'm delighted to be able to talk to you a little bit about ideas, maybe some tweaks here and there, not only in adjustment of the plan for the students and your satisfaction, but in relation to the appropriateness of the plan for our GCU assignment here. Now, we've been asked to see if the technologically related element is clear. And I have to say, I didn't get the idea of a podcast until much further down in the verbiage. I think maybe the goal of the assignment should be for the kids to derive a fiction artifact using a podcast in association with their research. So maybe saying that from the outset. This kind of seems like a cross-curricular idea, which I totally applaud, but I didn't get the idea which curriculums we're crossing. Are we crossing with history? Are we crossing with language? Are we crossing with science? I didn't quite understand that aspect of using that term. I think all we need to do here is redefine. Take the goals of the lesson and infuse them with that idea of the technological aspect of the podcast. Now, the idea here too, in one of our questions in the GCU prompt is the skill directly related to a technological aspect, or is the genre appropriate to what we're doing? I would say yes, and I'm a little confused. Podcasts, to me, are normally conversational. It's usually two people talking or someone giving an idea of information that they're trying to relate to the listening audience, the crowd at large, the public sphere. The genre of fiction is more suitable to maybe an audiobook or an educational lesson or a video lecture. You're asking the kids to take the elements of fiction, to research on them, to discuss them, and present them in a podcast. Podcasts, to me, are more nonfiction, but maybe you're taking an approach that's different and will intrigue them, and that's a great idea. Turning the element on its head might give them a different way of approaching it. And I think you're absolutely brilliant to use the idea of technology and podcasts, because you're right. The kids already know about this, whether they're at a Composition 101 course in college or like my kids here in my own high school classroom. They listen to these things. They know how to make a TikTok. They know what podcasts are. So bringing that element in that's already familiar is a great idea. And you're also right in the fact that they already know what the elements of fiction are. They've been taught those things by you, but now it's time for them to transfer those skills to something that's a little bit more individual and presented by them in a way that is a little bit report-like. Maybe turn it into a news report instead of a podcast. I'm not sure if that fits. The idea of individual too is the only other thing that kind of tweaked me a little bit when I was reading through your lesson plan and studying it. We're called to make sure that this has a high volume level of experiential learning and collaboration and all of that. And I'm not so sure your lesson plan elements 1, 2, and 3 fit into that, or I'm misreading it. I'm not 100% sure. You're asking the kids to promote a paper, give ideas. That seems pretty individual, but maybe you're having an idea of doing it a different way. I would suggest writing those ideas in the plan. Maybe not necessarily for the plan's sake, but certainly for our sake as we're working on this project for Dr. Cooper. Perhaps the brainstorming thing could read something along the lines of, the students will sit in groups of 4 and pass the computer around and each add on an element of fiction that they've researched and that needs to be disseminated in the podcast. Or they're going to sit in groups and decide who's going to write the script, who's going to actually do the speaking on the podcast, how is this going to be presented, what platform are they going to upload it to, that kind of thing. I'm not seeing a lot of language along those lines in this particular lesson plan, but again, you may have those things in your head. And as an educator for many years, I have very often gotten caught in the trap of, oh, that makes sense to me, but we have to make it make sense to them. And if there's anything I've learned coming back into the arena after 30 years, you really have to spoon feed the kids a little bit, even in college. There's an element of, I don't know, it's not even anxiety or disassociation. It's just they kind of need to be told what to do. Now, you will have those English savants who will be able to do this at the drop of a hat. But for most of your kids, I think you'll find that you kind of need to lay it out. A checklist, not only for them, but for you, will allow that kind of cohesion. And again, for the requirements of our assignment here at GCU, we want to make sure that we're addressing all of those questions that Dr. Cooper gave us. I think the objectives are great. I think they do plug in to what we've been learning and what we want to learn and what we want to perpetuate in the design of this lesson plan. Again, I think we need to up our game a little bit with the idea of collaboration, and the instruction is great. The references to the standards are great. Everything that you have is very academically rigid and sound. What I'm not gleaning from the writing is how it's going to engage the kids and how it's going to be fun for them and how it's going to create a community of learning. Again, just something to consider. We're all works in progress, of course, but as that's one of the elements that we're asked to address in this assignment, that might be something you want to think about. The interaction thing, the idea of creating something that's very succinct and directed to the kids so they know what to do. And just for an experiential advice kind of notion here, Dr. Cooper even suggested to me, as I'm using YouTube as a platform, that I indicate to my kids that it's going to be set to private. A lot of them get very nervous, upset, anxious that their work is going to be displayed for the world without their permission. In high school, I do this, and you would think in college that wouldn't be an issue, but it is. My son's a freshman at university right now, and he says a lot of kids get very nervous to give public speaking presentations, to speak extemporaneously in front of folks, or even to have their words recorded, such as we're doing now, and to have those presentations evaluated by a professor, but certainly not to be exposed to the class. That's up to you. But that scope of that notion should be delineated in the lesson plan. Hey kids, we're going to do a podcast. I'm going to be the only one that listens to it. I'm going to be the only one that hears your thoughts. So please, that opens them up to be more honest, to be more adventurous, to be braver in their choices and in their opinions. So all in all, I think it was a great job. Good, well done. I think just maybe consider those things about, again, collaboration, engagement, making it fun. I know you have those things in your head. I know, because I've read your discussion posts. But I think maybe, again, indicating those elements in the lesson would kind of up your game as far as our GCU assignment. Again, the lesson is sound, but let's get that word podcast maybe in there a little bit earlier, since we're talking about a technological aspect that we're focusing on. And then we can go from there. So best of success with the rest of the semester. Hope I get to see you soon. Bye-bye.